Good. Good afternoon, one and all. We are from SDM Engineering College. Myself, Mayur Patil, and we have a Professor. To begin with, we have this analogy wherein we are comparing cloud to God. So, how we do is we human beings belonging to various religions, we either go to temple, church, mosque, and we pray, we chant, mantra, dhyana, shloka, japa, many ways we have to connect to God. Similarly, using any browser, maybe Chrome, Mozilla, Opera, and from any device which has an internet connection, PC, mobile, tablet, or any device that will come in the future, with the available service providers, Airtel, Vodafone, Idea, Docomo, like that, we can connect to the cloud from any browser. Yeah. Coming to this slide, this is the Airtel my plan, customized plan available. We all are aware of, most of us, we are aware of this. So here we can customize our SMS, our ISD calls, the roaming 2G and 3G. This we are calling as a democratic in nature. As per our need, we are customizing it. Similarly, we see a further slide wherein we can customize the computing resources as per our need. Yeah, assume we have made a document which is there in a doc file on the local machine, on the current machine, and if you want to make it as a .pdf, in this case we have many choices available. Ideally we put a plugin to the MS the software, and that is one way we get a .pdf option, save as it available. Or else we can put a .doc to .pdf converter, software is required. Or the easy one is go to online, just put in the online .doc to .pdf converter online. We get many sites, out of which if you choose the first one, it looks like this. Here we have the option like select files available. If you click on that, it will choose the document from the current machine, which is in a doc format, which is to be made as a .pdf format. And once we enter the email ID, which is optional, then click on the convert. The .doc file goes from the local machine to somewhere else. It goes to some set of machines which are far away from our place. It becomes .pdf and comes back to the local machine. That somewhere else it can be called as the cloud. So .doc file went from our machine, became .pdf and came back. So it went to cloud and it came back. If you are using the Gmail and Facebook, then we can be sure that we are already using the cloud computing. Now coming to this slide on Ubuntu.com. Ubuntu is not a new one. In 1995, 1998 only it was in progress. So Ubuntu has solutions for cloud, server, desktop, phone, tablet, TV, and even they give OpenStack manual they give, through which we can make a private cloud for our laboratory in the engineering colleges. Even they give long-term support for their OS. Coming to this slide. Yeah, sorry for the inconvenience. So the takeaway here is in Unix, everything is a file, whether a hardware or a software, right? Yeah. So here we can see in this folder structure, we have a corresponding folder available for a corresponding hardware file. So for floppy has a corresponding file system available over here, CD-ROM has a file over here, and similarly we have other things available. And if you want to talk to those hardware, it's enough if you talk to those corresponding files. Coming to this slide, it's on virtualization. So virtualization is not a new thing. It's a very old technology of say it's around 30 years old technology. This you have seen in the our Windows XP. If you right click on the My Computer, we can see the advanced tab. There if you go to settings, then we can see the advanced. Therein we can come to the virtual memory tab, wherein if we can give 11 GB from C drive, E drive, EF drive accordingly, then we can virtually increase the RAM size of our computer, which gives rise to something like this, wherein the address space what you're talking to may correspond to the actual RAM and also the address which is there on the hard disk, means part of the file system which is like acting like a RAM. So if this is possible, wherein the hard disk or the part of file system is working like a RAM, then it should also be possible to make an entire virtual machine, right? Wherein the box of three box roles, entire single box can play. So this can be Moodle server, it can be DB2 server, a Fedora server. A single machine can play all the three roles now. It is because of virtualization, which is the backbone of the cloud computing. So we get a hypervisor, it can be our VMware or VirtualBox by Oracle, which gives us this flexibility of creating the virtual machine on a single machine. So on the bare hardware, without putting any OS, if you put the VMware, if you put the OS, then you put the VMware or the VirtualBox, then we can make the virtual machines on which we can run the guest OSs and guest applications. Each virtual machine will have its own IP address. So coming to hypervisors, two types of hypervisors are there. Type 2 is what we are familiar with. On the bare hardware, if you put the say Windows 7 operating system, which becomes the host operating system, on top of that there can be them like a media player or some other VLC player applications running, which are the host applications. Coming to this side, it's a hypervisor, which can be VMware Workstation or the VirtualBox. On top of that, we can put the guest operating systems. On top of that, we can run the guest applications. Coming to type 1 hypervisor, on the bare hardware, without putting any OS, we can directly put the hypervisor, which can be Microsoft Hypervisor or Citrix Zen Server, something like that. And we can run directly the virtual machines, virtual guest operating systems, and as well as the guest applications can be run. So that gives us this flexibility, wherein earlier we had this option. At the boot time only we are supposed to choose which OS we want. But now, with the help of virtualization, we can run the OS like an application. So as we saw in the earlier slide with the Airtel, we are able to customize the resources. Here also we can see we can customize the computing resources as per our need. And we can make our own virtual machine as per our need, as per our requirement. And once it is ready, we get something like this. We have the on this machine of Windows 7 as the host OS, we have put the VMware Workstation. On top of that, Fedora 14, Ubuntu, Windows 7, and CentOS, 4 OSs are running, right? And this is a possibility. It's only possible because of virtualization. Coming to this slide, once we virtualize the things, then it's possible to make a data center like this, which can be called as a centralized repository or a godown of computers, which uses storage as well as computing power, like this on the left-hand side of the screen. It maintains the data of some particular body of knowledge or some organization of some business interest. Coming to right-hand side on the same screen, we can see the latest invention by Microsoft, wherein they are putting the data center in the ocean, so that the cooling cost can be reduced. Or else we know that data center consumes a lot of power. If you put it in the ocean like this, it saves a lot of power which is spent for the cooling purposes. Coming to this slide, Google, which you all are familiar with. So Google uses this computing facility. So if you open the Chrome browser, and there if you type on any browser is equal to say 2 plus 2, we get 4. Or if you write is equal to sign of 60 into pi by 80, 180, it uses the answer there only. It means the computing power is available in the browser only, which was earlier very costly. We are aware of the mainframe, where we used to go to mainframe, give the punching cards and wait for the results. That was the time earlier. Now we have something like this, wherein the computing power is available. It's very cheap, available in the browser only. And even Google is given us the Google Drive, 15 GB free storage space is given. And it has given us many services Like in the Google Drive, we get Google Docs, which come under SaaS, software as service available. So we have the Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Spreadsheet, Google Forms, Google Drawing, like this. And coming to this slide, this left corner of this slide. So data centers of Google, they're available over here on Europe and in the South America and in the some parts of the Asia. So whenever we do something on the Gmail, or we search something, or we compute something, every time the data goes to these countries and comes back. Coming to this slide, cloud computing characteristics. So we have the 5 essential characteristics of the cloud computing. One is on-demand self-service. Like our Google Docs, they should be available wherever we go, from whichever machine we access. Across the globe, they are available, and from where they are coming, we don't know, but they are always available there. And it has the rapid elasticity. It can scale up and scale down vertically or horizontally as per our need. And we are paying only for what we use. It is called as pay as you go or pay as you grow. So these 5 are the essential characteristics of the cloud computing. So Google Drive, it has the support for all these things. Even many examples we'll see, IBM Bluemix and even the Microsoft Azure, they all give these 5 essential characteristics. Here we can summarize the cloud computing models, wherein we can see the cloud deployment models. We have the private cloud, community cloud, and public cloud available. Private cloud is as good as like a school bus or the company bus meant for the specific people only. Public cloud is like a government bus available for the government as a public one. Public doesn't mean it is free. It is available at some cost. Hybrid is a mixture of both private and public cloud. Coming to service models, whatever Google Docs we saw, they come under software as service, wherein we are just consuming them. And if you are aware of the Google App Engine or Microsoft Azure or the IBM Bluemix, they come under the PaaS, wherein we get the Eclipse-like environment available to develop an application. And coming to IaaS, which is the infrastructure available for us, so that is similar to our Amazon Web Services, on which all the PaaS and IaaS they run. So whenever we use Google Docs, we are essentially using the Google's infrastructure as service. Coming to this slide, so this is what the essential characteristics we saw: on-demand self-service, broad network access, these things, and common characteristics. So cloud is very good in resilient computing. If any machine, any server goes down, there will be the live migration facility by the load balancer, and we get the service up and running continuously. So here we can see some examples of the IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. So in brief, SaaS means the Google Docs, Google Spreadsheet, Salesforce, IBM Lotus, all those things. They are for consumption. We consume the SaaS. Coming to PaaS, wherein our Google App Engine is there, Microsoft Azure, Windows Azure is there. They all come under PaaS, where we build on the PaaS. We get a Eclipse-like IDE available, where we build on those PaaS. Coming to IaaS, Amazon Web Service is there, wherein we host upon that. So now coming to the basic question, what is cloud? So why are there multiple devices, maybe the laptop or the desktop or the phone, tablet, any of these devices with the internet connection, we are getting the SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. It means we are using someone else's server to host, to process, to store the data, to compute, to store. So cloud computing says it is good in computing power, it is infinite in computing power, and it is infinite in the storage power. All these things we are getting only the browser from any machine. Coming to this slide, slide number 22, XaaS. So X can be anything over here. So earlier we discussed IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. So this X can be anything. As we can see on the slide here, it can be infrastructure or storage or database, information, process, application, platform, integration, security, even login as a service is possible. So all those things are available as service. We just need a browser with internet connection, and we can access anything as service. Yeah. So this is in the brief what we did as a part of our cloud computing. We discussed the concepts, and we used the cloud-based IDEs to develop, to debug, and to deploy simple mobile and cloud-based applications. So without installing any software on the machine, students were able to develop a software, debug it, and deploy it on the cloud. So we used Google App Engine for this purpose. Yeah, and we use this IDE called the CodeNV. It's a UK-based company which uses many runtimes like Python, and Android also is available, and Java runtime, and even the PHP runtime are available. So we get an ID similar to Eclipse on the browser. So nothing is to be installed for us. Directly we can, any machine we can start the development, debug it, then deploy it on the cloud. And also we can manage the health of the application. So this is one of the application which you put up on the cloud. Similar to Blogspot, we have Google has given us AppSpot, which is applicationspot.com, and this is the version number 2. Per Gmail ID, Google gives us 25 applications which we can deploy, which can be either Python based or the PHP based or the Java based. And per application like this, which is application ID for us, SD03IS032 application ID which you have chosen should be unique. And per application ID, we can have 15 versions. So ideally, we can get 15 into 25. We get 375 applications which can run freely on the Google App Engine per Gmail ID. So this is a basic application which our students develop in the Cloud ID within the Java programming language. Sorry. And then Google App Engine has the our PaaS. So it's a simple HTML taking 2 text boxes, taking 2 numbers with 4 buttons, and on click of that, values go to the servlet, gets computed, and we get back the result. Coming to this example, which is version number 4 of the same example, and this is for the CRUD operations. So here we are storing the USN and name on the Google Data Store, and we are doing the insert or the create, read, update, and delete with the same Java as a programming language, HTML as a front end, and Java servlets as a servlet which responds to our queries. Yeah, this is the Google App Engine dashboard we are getting, Google Developers Console, through which we can maintain the health of our application. So we can see who are accessing our application from where, and we can enable disable services, APIs as per our need. So they give us many more features like a logging, we get versions we can manage, and it is pay as you go, pay as you grow. So if you are consuming anything other than the quota given to us, then you have to pay for it. If it's within the quota, then we are safe. We will not pay anything for that. Even we get a virtual machine available, we get a console, BigQuery APIs we can use, the data store we can use. So in general, it's a dashboard by the Google App Engine to manage the health of our application. Coming to this slide, IBM Bluemix. So it's one more PaaS as we discussed earlier, similar to the CodeNV, on which we can develop and deploy the applications. It is by IBM. So we explored even IBM Bluemix, and also we explored Microsoft Azure as a part of the cloud computing course. So Microsoft Azure free trial they give, and we can develop and deploy the applications on this. Yeah. Coming to this slide, it's by the Amazon Web Services. So here we can see they give the Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud they give. Also we can see Amazon has recently the support for IoT also. AWS IoT is available. So they all come under the pay as you go, pay as you grow basis. So they have given us 250,000 messages with the pub sub model for the IoT, and if they exceed that, you have to pay for it. Yeah, this is a blog which we made for the cloud computing, cc-cs475.blogspot.in. So we have stored all our information over there. It means which all topics we covered and what all tools the students developed, and even feedback which we took anonymously. That all the results they are stored over here. This is one mind map which you have developed on by the cloud computing. So here we can see we have summarized about the cloud computing over here. So many definitions we can see. Teachers, they see it as a tool for survival. Students, they see it as a tool for tomorrow, tool of tomorrow. For everybody, it is a new writing slate, new learning habitat, new phenomena. And for startups, entrepreneurs, it's a new opportunity. It goes on like that. Coming to this branch, essential characteristics which we saw earlier: on-demand, self-service, ubiquitous network access, rapid electricity, proficient, transparent. Those points we have. Coming to the cloud computing, it's for whom? It is available for all the fields. It is fully democratic in nature, for government, for the moving industry, for election, for the cricket, for national purposes, for parents, for everything, for everybody. Cloud is very open. The foundational elements we can see over here. Virtualization is the backbone of the cloud computing. Then we get distributed computing, grid computing, autonomous computing, broad network access, SOA and service level agreements, they all come under the foundational elements. Coming to the three commandments, so cloud says to cloudify our work, and we no need to buy any software, we can just rent the service. Coming to this branch, which is the cloud service, the delivery models, so IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, and XaaS, they come over here. Right. Coming to this branch, we can see the deployment models, private, public, hybrid is available. And coming to the cloud stakeholders, we have the cloud carrier, cloud broker, who are in between the provider and the consumer. Auditor is also between the provider and the consumer. They audit how the usage happens and is it as per the service level agreement or not. Coming to this branch, we can see the key terms involved in the cloud computing. What is privacy? What is SOA? So one by one terms we can see. And we have developed many applications as a part of the cloud, which you have put over here. This mind map is made using a tool by name mindmixture.com. It's freely available under Google Drive. So it's a collaborative way of working. Yeah. Now we'll talk about Internet of Things.
Internet of Things, as the name suggests, it is the things which are connected to the internet. So using this concept, things will get connected to the internet and they can send the data and then receive back the data, and we can develop the projects out of this. So we faculty, last semester we ran a course, elective course on Internet of Things for 7th semester students. So coming to the prediction, the, there is a prediction that, like, currently there is a survey conducted in 2014. It says that there are currently 10 billion devices which are over the internet, and it averages up to 1.5 per person. But if we consider scenario of 2020, there will be 50 billion devices. It means there will be at least 8 devices per person. So as you can see here, automotive industry has around $202 billion industry. Healthcare also, it has around $69 billion industry. So as you can see here, as the year progresses, the number of devices getting connected to a person, it keeps on increasing. So all these devices can get connected to the internet, and the concept of Internet of Things is possible. Now coming to this slide, which is this is a blog which we created named IoT-CS427.blogspot.in. So this is the course which was run on from August to December 2015 for 7th semester students. If you can, if the listeners can refer to this site, there are some drop-down menus available, so the listeners can go through these links. And we have put up the Internet of Things mind map.
So here in the mind map, as similar to the cloud computing, we have made 9 main branches. We have referred some books and made this map. So to begin with, we can see the human being, how the IoT is applicable. So for human being, mainly for the well-being of the human, so we have this the wearable or ingestibles available, right? So wearable means like a smart wristband, and ingestible means recently for diabetes we have got some device which you can put inside the human body, which can monitor the incoming glucose and release the insulin accordingly. So human being, wherever we can apply IoT, that is summarized over here. Coming to this branch, here you can see for home how you can apply the cloud computing, how you can apply the IoT in cloud computing rather. So mainly at home, the major applications include energy management, core automation, safety and security, usage-based design, and pre-sales analytics. Right? Usage-based design means the devices, they will learn the usage pattern and they will get adjusted to that. Coming to this branch, office, where all we can use IoT. So here we can see the augmented reality, worker monitoring, building security, energy monitoring. In all these places, we can use the IoT. Here we can see as a part of industries where all we can use the IoT, operations management, predictive maintenance. Before any device comes for due for repair, the manufacturer or the owner can know in advance and take a precaution. Inventory optimization. So without getting the inventory shrinkage, the inventory shrinkage can be prevented with the help of IoT. Health and safety, automatic quality control, all are possible because of this sensors and IoT. Coming to the retail environment, here we can use IoT in these points. Automated checkout, as soon as you walk out of the shopping mall, we are charged accordingly as per the purchase you have done. Layout optimization is possible, smart customer relationship management is possible, wherein we get a real-time in-store analytics to our mobile, and even customers offers they'll be sent to our mobile. It's so possible because of the data mining as well as the IoT combination of that. So inventory shrinkage we can prevent here also. Coming to this branch, work site, it can be agriculture or any other place where all we can use IoT. So in smart agriculture, we can use for selective irrigation, soil monitoring, and all those places. So again, in work site, it can be IoT enabled R&D, equipment maintenance, operations optimization, health and safety. Yeah. Coming to the next branch of vehicles, here we can see for in foreign countries, it's already in place. If our vehicle is IoT enabled, then you have to pay less insurance. Even if health insurance, if you're using smart devices to monitor ourselves, then you have to pay less premium for the health insurances. Then coming to this other thing, new service model IoT can get us, new customer interactions, improve safety and reliability, all are possible because of the IoT in the vehicle industry. To cities, so public safety and health we can use IoT, traffic control we can use, resource management we can use. And the last one, the outside where all we can use for the shipment tracking, for air traffic control, the flight navigation, the same one, vehicle tracking, all those places we can make use of the IoT.
Well, coming back to the slides, for developing applications on IoT, the students can take up the IoT projects and they can develop the prototype applications. So for doing this, we basically use the microcontroller. So now the question comes, what is a microcontroller? As we can see here, a microcontroller is an integrated chip that is often part of an embedded system. The microcontroller includes RAM, CPU, ROM, and I/O ports, and also sometimes timers like a standard computer, but they are designed to execute only a specific task to control a single system. But they are much simpler and they are smaller so that they can include all the functions required on a single chip. So for developing IoT applications, we use a board called as Arduino board, which encases Atmega 328 microcontroller. As we can see here, it has two external connection pins. One is the USB plug and the other one is the external power supply. 1 ampere connector, or we can also connect it through a computer via USB port. So if we use USB port, we can also write a code for the code to the Arduino board, as well as it can be used to power up the Arduino board. As we can see here, we have around some pins which are on the Arduino board. There are 20 pins. There are 0 to 13, which we call it as a digital pins, and also there are analog pins which are named from A0 to A5. So total there are 6 analog pins and 14 digital pins. And also it has some analog reference pin, digital ground pins, as well as reset pin, and also it has a 3.3 volt pin as well as a 5 volt pin, and 2 ground pins as well as voltage input pin. It also has a reset button, and also it is available in the Amazon for 500 rupees. It is called as Arduino Uno board. And there are among the digital pins, there are few pins which are named with tilde sign. These are called as PWM pins, which provide the analog output taking the digital input. So PWM refers to pulse width modulation, and these pins can be used to devise a remote control circuit for connecting to the room automation applications. And we have Arduino.cc website, wherein we can download the Arduino software and we can install it in our machines. So this Arduino, current version of Arduino is 1.6.7 and is available for all the types of operating systems. As you can see, it is available for Windows in a zip format, installer, Mac OS, Linux, even for 32-bit and 64-bit, and but for Windows it's only available for 32 bits. So you can listeners can go to this website and can download the application. And we also have explored one cloud IDE for developing the Arduino applications. The name of this is CodeBender, CODE BENDER.cc. So this has the support for most of the Arduino boards. So wherein directly we can log into this and can create an account and just plug in the USB device to the Arduino, and we can directly program using the CodeBender.cc website. Only requirement is that we need to have a good bandwidth and a Google Chrome browser installed. So as the line goes here, the latest Arduino playground in the world: create, share, and run your code anywhere. As you can see here, this is a basic interface for the CodeBender. It has some built-in examples. So if you click on this tab, it will load the built-in examples, and also we can edit the example, clone it, and save it in our login. And also we can download it using these buttons. Here this verify code means that we can compile. That means it's like a compilation. It will check for any compiler errors, whether the code has any compiler errors. So when you click on run on Arduino, it will burn that code into the Arduino board. So these are the COM ports which Windows is used to connect to the Arduino, and this automatically gets selected when we use the CodeBender IDE. And it also has a serial monitor with which we can send and receive the commands to the Arduino board. This is a basic layout. This is one built-in example called LED blink. So this is a basic structure of the Arduino code, which has two functions. It's like a C. It is called as Objective C. It is written on top of C language. It has two functions named setup and loop. Setup is used to set up is to initialize once. So when the code is burnt onto the Arduino board, this function will be executed once. Or when you press the reset button, this will be executed only once. And after that, whatever the logic we want to write, it has to be written inside this function only. So as you can see in the comment, the loop routine runs over and over again forever. So this is the overall structure of the Arduino code. So this program is just to blink the built-in LED which is connected to pin number 13. So as you can see here, there is a small LED available which is internally connected to pin number 13, and these are the TX and RX pins, and this is a power pin. So when you plug into the USB cable, this LED will glow, meaning that your power is connected. So this will blink the LED intermittently. It will make it high and low within the delay of 1 second. Coming to the sensors and the modules which can be connected to Arduino, one of the basic module or basic component which can be connected to Arduino is the RGB LED. So RGB LED is a composite module which encompasses red, green, and blue LEDs. So this is a connection diagram for that. There are some sensors which can be connected to the Arduino. Few of them we are going to discuss now. One of them is the LM35 analog temperature sensor, which returns the current temperature value of the room. It has 3 pins, pin number 1, 2, and 3. One has to be connected to the 5 volt or VCC to the Arduino board. From the second line, we are supposed to take the analog data and then display it on the program. Third one is the ground pin. It's called as LM35. It's a less cost sensor available in the market for less than 100 rupees. It is calibrated directly in Celsius. The advantage of this is it directly gives the values in centigrade, and it operates between 4 volt to 30 volts. It is suitable for remote applications, and it is rated for full minus 55 degrees Celsius to plus 150 degrees Celsius range. And also it has low self-heating, and its variation is 0.08 degrees Celsius in the still air. It can be used in power supplies like battery management systems or heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. In SMPS we can use it, and also in the applications which requires temperature sensitive requirements. This is the screenshot of the working of LM35. So this we got as a serial monitor, and this code simply displays the current temperature readings of the of the room, and as you can see here, it is written inside the loop. So this temperature reading will be displayed infinitely. And there is a delay of 1000 millisecond means 1 second. So after 1 second, it keeps on displaying the current temperature values. Coming to the next sensor, we call it as a LDR sensor. It's also called as a photoresistor. As the name itself suggests, it is light dependent resistor. So as the intensity of the light increases, the resistance keeps on decreasing. So this will basically sense the light intensity. So this is a symbol for the LDR sensor, and also it is made up of two metallic contact frames, as you can see here. And also it has a spring object which is cadmium sulfide crack, which basically senses the light. So as you can see here, as the light intensity increases, the resistance keeps on decreasing. Next sensor we have is DST11 sensor, which is digital humidity and temperature sensor. So as you can see here, it's a composite sensor made up of two components. One is it has a humidity sensing component, and also it has a temperature sensor thermistor. So it can sense the humidity readings of the room as well as the temperature readings of the room. So as you can see, it has the 4 pins. The second pin is the data pin, third one is a no connection, and this one depicts the pin configuration or the connection diagram with Arduino board. It has some features. It's a low cost, available in the market for 100 or 120 rupees. It works with 3 to 5 volt power. It has 2.5 milliamps max current. It is good for 20 to 80% humidity readings with 5% accuracy, and also good between 0 to 50 degrees Celsius, and also it has a plus or minus 2 degree accuracy. Applications of this are immense. It can be used to sense the temperature level of the soil, can be used in power supply units, weather stations for providing humidity at cheaper cost, battery management applications, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning applications, and also temperature sensor applications. Next we have one more sensor named accelerometer, which is named as ADXL335 accelerometer. So as you can see, it has 5 pins. One is ground pin, 5 volt pin, XYZ. So XYZ returns the current position of the accelerometer in microcoulombs values. So it's a 3-axis sensing equipment. Small low profile package, comes up with a low profile package. It has a power of less than 350 microamperes. Single supply operation, works with 1.8 volts to 3.6 volt. It also has a 10,000 G shock survival. It has excellent temperature stability. It's a low cost, it's a sensitive, low power motion and field sensing application. It can be used in these applications for controlling the image using in the cameras you can use, for disk stabilization we can use, and also for disk protection. It can also be used in smart bands for sports and health devices, and also it can be used in gaming systems. Next sensor we have is HCSR04 ultrasonic range sensor. This sensor is used to detect the distance between the sensor as well as the objects. So it has 4 pins: VCC, trigger, echo, and ground. So there are 2 receivers. One we call it as a transmitter, and the other we call it as a receiver. It sends ultrasonic waves, and the ultrasonic waves bounce the object, and they cut the ultrasonic waves, and the waves gets reflected back. The time taken from the transmitting and the receiving is calculated to find the distance. So in other words, it is used to sense the distance. So hence the name ultrasonic range sensor. It is available for 100 rupees in the Amazon. Next we have a soil moisture sensor, which basically provides the which has a probe kind of thing which has to be inserted into the soil to detect the humidity values. So it acts as a potentiometer and finds the humidity values. So that will be returned to a chip, and this has to be connected to the Arduino board. So it returns the values between 0 to 1023. Next we have is a Bluetooth module. This module can be used to send and receive data from the Arduino board to the other applications, or we can send the data to the cloud, or otherwise we can also send the data locally and can be stored in the database also. So it works with 2.45 gigahertz. It's called as HC05 Bluetooth module. It has some features. It works with 2.1 megabits per second, or on an average it works with 160 kilobits per second. It has a security. It has a power supply of 3.3 volts DC, working temperature greater than 20 degrees Celsius. It costs around 300 rupees in the Amazon. there is a one Google Play app called Arduino Droid, with which we can actually control the pins of Arduino. So we can make if we install this and then connect a Bluetooth to the Arduino and tap this button number 13, the built-in LED will blink. So it will send a high signal to the 13. So with this we can control the devices by connecting a Bluetooth. Next we have is a ESP8266 Wi-Fi module. This module works with only with 3.3 volts. This is the pin configuration of ESP8266 Wi-Fi module, which works with the Wi-Fi protocol. It has RX and TX pins. The TX and RX pins of this has to be connected to the TX and RX pins of Arduino. This we call as a cross connection. This VCC and CH_PD, which we call as a chip underscore pull down, has to be connected to 3.3 volt, and it has two configurable pins, general purpose input output pins, named as GPIO 0 and GPIO 2, wherein we can send the data to the ESP8266 via these two pins. It has some features, like it comes with the integrated TCP/IP protocols stack. It has support for 802.11 protocols. It comes with the Wi-Fi direct or soft access point protocols. So all these are possible with this ESP8266 Wi-Fi serial module. It has an integrated temperature sensor, and also has a support for antenna, and also it has a wake up and transmit packets in less than 2 milliseconds. It has standby power consumption of less than 1 milliwatt. Next is a composite composite board, which we call as a Node MCU. It comes with a built-in Wi-Fi module, and also it has a Arduino board available inside there. So it's a dual component. So as you can see, this can also be used as an integrated component, wherein it can directly send the it can directly get connected to the internet and can send the data to the cloud. Next we have for this Node MCU comes with around 800 rupees in the Amazon. Next we have is a well-known protocol called MQTT, which was formerly known as MQ Telemetry Transport Protocol. As it goes that it's an ISO standard, which stands for Public Subscribe. It is a lightweight messaging protocol for use on top of TCP/IP protocol. So when we are developing IoT applications, the HTTP protocol is a heavyweight protocol. So since there will be issues of bandwidth, we cannot rely properly on the HTTP protocol. So we go for MQTT protocol. So HTTP protocol is said to take around 2 kilobytes of data or message header. So to send and receive the response for request and receive, it takes 2 kilobytes of data, wherein MQTT takes only 2 bytes of data. So as it is available in the slide. So this is depicted in the slide. So it is designed for connections with remote locations where a small data footprint is required or the network bandwidth is limited. It is ideal for mobile applications because of small size, low power usage, minimized data packets, and efficient distribution of information to one or many receivers.
So using all these sensors and the Wi-Fi module and the Bluetooth module, we developed many applications, and we even made a full use case, which we call it as a web-controlled LED. And as we saw in the previous slide, MQTT protocol, Eclipse has a support for that. It's a broker. So unlike HTTP, which is a request response protocol, and wherein there is a role of a server available over there. In the case of MQTT, there is no server. There is a broker available. So any devices, they can publish the data, and those cloud apps, they can subscribe to that. And the cloud applications can even publish. If the devices they subscribe, they can get the data. If the analogy can be given, it is same as the WhatsApp group. If we become part of the group, means if we subscribe to the group, then we can get the data. And if we publish, others can see the data. Similarly over here, so we made web controlled LED we made available, and it's functional at this URL. Again deployed on the Google App Engine. So if you click on this connect, we get this message that is made a connection to the Eclipse broker. It's iot.eclipse.org. So Eclipse has made a service available at port number 1883, wherein this broker is running, which you can use for the testing purposes. And here we can see an app by name MyMQTT, which is available in the Play Store, through which we can see the working of the pub/sub model. So it's called as pub/sub model, not a request response model. We can publish it and get a subscribe and get the response also, like this. So we can control any device from anywhere using this URL. You're using the Node MCU for that, for this purpose. It's fully functional use case. Coming to this screen, it is the Chrome MQTT lens available for testing the MQTT protocol. So if you go to Chrome extensions and choose MQTT lens, we get this extension through which we can connect to the any of the brokers. Say if you enter here like iot.eclipse.org, we get connected to that broker and we can see the PubSub model how we can use. Coming to this slide, it's on the GSM module. So the Wi-Fi model we saw earlier, now this is a GSM module costing around 1400 rupees, to which we can put a SIM card and we can make call, receive call, we can send SMS, receive SMS, and even the micro SIM also we can put over here, and we can connect to the audio jack and make calls or receive calls. So cost is around 1400 rupees, and it's a GSM Shield. So where all we can use it? In all these applications, home automation, vehicle tracking, and remote monitoring and control, agriculture automation. In all these places it is available, as you can see from these images. Right. Coming to this slide on Ethernet Shield, this is a third shield which we explored as a part of the IoT course. So it's also available along with Arduino. Either we can have Arduino separate and Ethernet Shield separate, or else it's available as a combo together. Also, one shield is available. So this is a separate shield available which you can hook or place on top of the existing Arduino, what we saw earlier. So it uses 10 MB to 100 MB speed it uses, and we get a built-in through which we can talk to that. We have to plug in our LAN cable, Ethernet cable, to this slot, and we can use it. So we can make a full one-to-one use case. Even we can put a micro SD card over here. External libraries we get to talk to that. Coming to this ThinkSpeak, so here one statement can be made. So God has given us the power to think, then to speak, and we human beings are now, with the help of IoT, we are giving the things the power to speak. So things will be now enabled with the help of IoT to speak. So there is a website available by name thinkspeak.com, which can collect the sensor data, up to 10 sensors it supports, and they analyze with the help of MATLAB visualizations, as we can see on the right hand side of the screen. We can visualize the data. In this case, actually, we are using the LM35 data. The temperature sensors values are sent to the ThinkSpeak, and the plotting of the graph is possible automatically. And even we can act upon that. It means either we can trigger a mail. This website can trigger an email, or it can send a tweet, or it can send a Facebook post. And even a talkback is available to control the Arduino back. Coming to this slide, it is the application which we developed. ThinkSpeak doesn't give us much flexibility in the coding purpose, so we use this CodeNV, what we saw earlier, Eclipse Lake IDE. Along with that, we used the Google App Engine, the PaaS, and using this, we were able to send the temperature sensor values to the Google App Engine. So if we connect now, we get a fresh values, right? And we can control this. So even it's possible to connect multiple sensors and to control them. So this we have done using ESP8266 module. Coming to this is a Raspberry Pi. It's a mini computer available. It's a credit card like size available, costing around 2,800 rupees. It has 4 USBs, one HDMI cable available, SD card where OS we are putting, and even we can connect Ethernet cable. It's a microprocessor. We get 1 GB RAM built-in available, and 1.3 gigahertz speed. The Broadcom processor also is available. It has 40 GPIO pins. It has a lot of flexibility. A lot of options are available. If you go to raspberry.org site, we can see many examples which are made. Ideally, it was made in UK for the school children to work more with the hardware, but now it's of the more craze for the engineering students for their projects. Yeah, this is the considering the previous sensors which we discussed as a part of our course. We use all of them, and we made a project with this architecture. So multiple sensors we can connect as per the need. So if you have agriculture as the domain, then you have to choose the sensors accordingly. In this architecture, we can see LM35, DFT11, LDR sensor, ultrasonic range sensor, oil moisture sensor, all those things, and all those things we can connect to the microcontroller Arduino to collect the data. So in brief, this part is the data capturing device. We capture the data, sensor data, and using either ESP8266 or the GSM Shield or the Ethernet Shield, the data can be sent to the cloud. So in our case, we are using the Google App Engine. And once the data comes to cloud, either we can use Java or PHP or Python and apply the data mining techniques like classification, clustering, association rule mining, and even we can make use of the relevant APIs which are available And finally, we can make a decision. A decision support system is possible where we can recommend the owner to help him to take a decision. So this is a basic architecture which we use for most of our applications. Yeah, this is a list what is available in this blog. We had 55 students as a part of this course and 25 applications we made, 2 per team we made. So tweeting classroom, where the classroom is talking now, means classroom is sending a tweet. So we say things are speaking. Classroom is the thing which is speaking. So in one point is there, where in US 1.5 lakh cars are already given with IP address. That is the range things are going towards the Internet of Things. Yeah. So coming back to this smart monitoring of city transport, gesture control enactor with the accelerometer, we made an application. We have given the PPTs which were used for final demonstration, and even we have put the IEEE paper which we referred over here. And navigation tool for the physically impaired people. 2 people they worked on this. So they made a small application, a small rather a tool, a device which the blind people can wear it like a belt, along with the cane stick. He's using that, and it guides them with a ultrasonic sensor. Where is the obstacle? So it has a buzzer available and a LED available and a small vibrator available through which it alerts the person, the blind person, to take a proper decision where to keep his next step. Smart department, we are working towards it to make the cabin smart, to make the classroom smart, to save the power. Collision avoidance, we are using this with ultrasonic sensors and how we can use it for the real-time purposes. Coming to the smart railway gate, how we can avoid accidents, how we can use precision sensors and control it. Smart irrigation is possible with again the GSM shield. We can make the motor smart. Either we have to buy a smart device only, or we can with help of IoT we can make the existing devices smart. Yeah, so we have a big list available over here. Yeah, so we thank Professor Dastikop sir and other sites which were referred for the kind help, and most of the images are taken from Google, and we are available for the workshops in the neighboring colleges. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
How do we benchmark cloud services like
We are done, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. There are some questions. I'll read them out.
Sorry, sir. Yes, sorry, sir.
How do we benchmark cloud services like SaaS if we have to use it for HPC?
How do we benchmark the cloud services if we have to use it for
HPC?
High performance computing, HPC.
Yes, sir.
So cloud services they come with a quota, so we are using them within the quota. High performance means we have to exceed the quota what is given. Maybe you have to go for the pay as you go, pay as you grow more service models, and that is possible because high performance computing endpoints are available in the Google App Engine specifically. I hope I have answered the question.
What is the academic perspective in IoT, engineering curricula in management education domain?
Academic perspective in engineering curriculum and management perspective. So what we can say is India is a developing country and smart cities, it's a boom now. So IoT has a lot of scope available, and even if we go to syllabus over here in the IoT blog, we can see the government of India is has made a draft wherein it supporting a lot of IoT center of excellences, IoT projects. So IoT is a backbone for the smart cities. So it's a lot of engineering works are available over there.
What is the distinction between embedded systems sample examples like LED blinking versus IoT sample examples?
IoT sample examples and embedded system sample examples, there are more or less same. Now it has become, with the help of IoT, the microcontroller has become very affordable and very cheap. So in the local market also it is available. So what LED blink used to do with the big kits, that we are able to do in a small kit. So I think the size has reduced, functionality has come in a small chip. That is the enhancement we can say. The working wise it is same.
What is the difference between HTTP and MQTT?
Difference between HTTP and MQTT. So HTTP is a heavyweight protocol based on the request response model it works. And coming to the MQTT is very lightweight protocol meant for IoT only. Rather, it's meant for the real-time data. It's meant for real-time data, and the HTTP is meant for the regular information what we exchange. So if you want to, we can see some differences over here. Battery consumption is very high in the case of HTTP if you use in 3G or in the Wi-Fi also. MQTT is very lightweight, it's less 2 bytes only. Just to send it information like 27 degree, 28 degree temperature or room temperature, we don't need heavy header. So 2 KB of header is not required. We can use a lightweight protocol, and MQTT is made for this. It is made by IBM. So for IoT it is recommended.
Can we use Raspberry Pi towards power distribution automation?
Raspberry Pi for usage of power distribution automation, it's possible. So it's a microprocessor, it's a mini computer. So it's a mini computer, and all the logic we can write very easily, and it is possible. Even microcontroller can be used for the power distribution. If any sophisticated algorithm is there, then we recommend going for Raspberry Pi only.
ZigBee is a sensor or protocol?
ZigBee is a protocol, lightweight protocol.
What program is required to embed into Arduino chip circuits?
Sir, we are using Objective-C, but it also supports C++, it also supports Java. It's possible, sir. We are using Objective-C.
For which type of application Raspberry Pi is more suitable?
Raspberry Pi is suitable wherein it's mainly used in IoT for a server, web server, wherein MQTT broker we can run in the Raspberry Pi. That's the main intention, to work like a gateway. So for home automation, say for example, in a home we can put multiple sensors and multiple microcontrollers, and via Bluetooth or via Wi-Fi we can send the information to the Raspberry Pi as a gateway, and from the gateway Raspberry Pi it goes out to the cloud. That is the main intention of this Raspberry Pi in the IoT.
In cloud, what are the optimizing strategies?
In the cloud optimizing strategies, load balancing we have, wherein it supports the live migration. Workload we can shift from one machine to another machine. So that's the load balancer what we use for optimization purposes. So power we can save. We can put on the machine whenever you want, put up the machine whenever you want. So the load balancer module is the one which works upon that.
Instead of VMware hypervisor, are there any open source alternatives like Linux based KVM that can be used?
Yeah, we have many hypervisors available. We have listed a few over here. We can see Xen are available, which is a commercial one, and you can see here we have VMware as a type 1, and Citrix Xen server available, Microsoft Hyper-V available as a type 1 hypervisor. Type 2 we have VMware Workstation or VirtualBox by Oracle also available.
Is MQTT only for text data?
Mainly it's for MQTT is mainly for real-time data. So sensor data are usually like a text information only, usually. So MQTT is mainly for usually the text data and real-time data.
Please give few website links for IoT video tutorial.
IoT video tutorials websites means Arduino.cc has many things available, and even in our blog we have kept many things. And if you go to raspberrypi.org, raspberrypi.org. We can see many videos in that regard. YouTube has rich videos available in that regard. In our IoT blog, we have kept sufficient information. IoT-cs427.blogspot.in. Here many links we have kept. If you go to others, many sites we can get over here. All the websites we have kept over here, which you have used.
What is the range of distance sensor?
Ultrasonic range sensor is available from 2 cm to 400 cm. It's ultrasonic SR04. We have SR05 available. They give it's as per the cost. It's available in Amazon. We have tried 2 different one with a range which use 2 mm accuracy.
As we know that microcontroller has very less memory, how do we deal with encryption?
Okay. Encryption is possible. MQTT is like we are using MQTT. If you use like a file system, it's not secure. HTTP we can use. It's HTTPS available. Similarly, we have MQTTS also available, which is like a UDP over TCP. So it is a secured one only. It's encrypted one. And if you want, we can use even the post method for sending the data, as we do in the regular web services. Get post method. We can use post method over here and encrypt it.
What is BeagleBone Black? Is it related to IoT?
Yes, sir. BeagleBone, Intel Edison, Galileo, all are the different boards available, which we can use for this microcontroller purpose, IoT purposes.
Thank you. So some of the attendees had some request for the slides. So if you can display your email address, they can contact you, sir.
Okay, sir. We'll display the email address over here.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank all the audience. Thank you, sir.